Hi, everyone. This is Paul Pereira, Vice President of Patient Advocacy at Saniona, and I'd like to welcome you to Saniona's Community Voices, where we highlight the voices of people living with rare diseases, their caregivers, and their medical professionals. Today, we're here to talk about Prader-Willi Syndrome with an expert. Lynn Garrick is a registered nurse, and she's a mother of 5, with one of her sons living with Prader-Willi Syndrome. Lynn is also the Regional Program Director for 13 PWS group homes. And she's the Medical Research Coordinator for PWSA USA. And she serves on the Board of Directors for the Minnesota Prader-Willi Syndrome Association. Lynn, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
For those that haven't heard of PWS, how would you describe it to them and how has it impacted your family?
Prader-Willi syndrome is a rare genetic disorder that affects approximately 1 in 15,000 individuals that are born, and it is recognized as the most common cause of life-threatening childhood obesity. Prader-Willi syndrome has affected every aspect of my life. I think I can honestly say that it affects my life for the better, but it's opened new worlds that I have never known of, new medical providers, medical treatments, new schools, having to deal with really severe behavioral outbursts. One of the biggest things is the frustration, the feelings of hopelessness at times, the isolation that comes with being the parent of a child with a rare disorder. For me, John's hyperphagia started roughly when he was 2 years old, and that is different for everyone. But at 2 years old, he was able to climb up onto, use the oven door as a step stool and get into the refrigerator, into the freezer. So from a very, very early age, we had to lock and alarm all of the doors and lock up all of our cabinets. So food security is something that is very difficult and hard to manage, especially in a big family and definitely out in the community, and trying to relay that information to caregivers and providers and friends and everyone else that you can is very difficult, and it leads to a lot of behavioral disruptions that impact the entire family.
When you talk about hyperphagia and having to take all of these, really drastic measures, how would you say hyperphagia differs from just being hungry?
For me, I explain it like this. If I didn't eat for a couple days, that's all I can think about is, where is my food? I feel for John, he's always thinking about food, always, whether he's truly hungry or not, that's always playing in the back of his mind. And so he can't attend to other tasks. He's always thinking about, how am I going to get into this food? I see food over there. How do I get it? How can I get food and then eat and eat? So he's always hungry, and he's never feeling a fullness that you and I would feel. But it's very difficult when that's always going on in the back of your head. It really disrupts his education, his attentiveness to conversations even, or distractibility watching TV. Food is everywhere and so pervasive in our society. It's very difficult for him to adjust to deal with that.
Lynn, you talked about all of the measures that families have to take, right, to adjust to hyperphagia. This reminds me, I read a report that was recently published by the Foundation for Prader-Willi Research that talks about the caregiver burden and how difficult it is. What would you say contributes to that? Is it mostly hyperphagia?
It is hyperphagia, but I also can't dismiss the fact that along with hyperphagia goes some definite behavioral aspects. So yes, the hyperphagia, for me, hyperphagia and behavior go hand in hand. It is having to train myself to be hypervigilant about food and food security, but my other children about food security, their friends about food security, my family, the teachers, family gatherings that once were something really to look forward to, holidays. They're always very focused on food. And so those holidays, where they were once really enjoyable, they're really scary times, because those are times when you really have to have all eyes on and food can't be out like it normally was on the table for people to talk and mingle and eat.
Could you share with us some of the day-to-day challenges of living with PWS?
So for me, with my other 4 children, they really had to grow up a lot quicker than other children because so much of my attention needed to go to my son with Prader-Willi syndrome. When other kids were coming over for sleepovers, we can't have fun popcorn movie nights, or you have to hide your food. Behavioral incidents occur and people are very scared that don't know what's going on. For me, it's difficult to maintain social relationships as a parent because of it's very isolating. You can't just pick up and bring your kids over for play dates without having to explain things. And even when you're out in the community with your other children, they have to know at any given moment that you might need to dip out and leave any activity because there's food insecurity, which leads to temper outbursts or behavioral issues. So it really does affect every aspect of life for the whole family.
And Lynn, when it comes to coping with overall managing the disease, what other strategies do you advise families to employ?
For me, I have to use humor because if I don't try to find the humor in every situation, I would be a crumbled mess in the corner. That's the biggest thing. I try to involve my children and my family as much as I possibly can in reaching out through whatever support groups that I can find, whether that be professional support groups or Facebook support groups, things of that nature. I really try to stay connected with others in the community to understand what they're going through and likewise what I'm going through and find support that way.
And in terms of innovations, what innovations do you hope will be available someday for your son?
Some of the innovations that I would hope to see for my son are new treatments for hyperphagia, treatments for the excessive daytime sleepiness, new therapies surrounding behavior management, and also best practices for providers, really good, knowledgeable, skilled providers in every single state and every hospital. I hope that my son can lead a full and happy life without being hyperphagic, without always having to think about food, so that he can attend to other things such as academics or a job when he gets older. I hope that there's enough awareness that I don't have to continuously explain to everyone, providers, physicians, school teachers, what Prader-Willi syndrome is and how to support my son. And I hope that not only physicians, but people in general have a better understanding of those living with rare disorders, specifically with Prader-Willi syndrome. And so there isn't a stigma and there isn't cruelty or kids making fun, that it's an understanding that this is something that can't be helped right now. But if the hyperphagia portion of that can go away, I have so much hope that other things will happen for him and he can attend to other activities of life that he will find enjoyable.
With May being Prader-Willi Syndrome Awareness Month, how do you choose to raise awareness?
I choose to raise awareness by posting things on my Facebook feed or Twitter or sharing things that raise awareness, and definitely on a day-to-day basis whenever I'm walking around with my son and people say, well, hello, I educate them a little bit about Prader-Willi syndrome because my son is very outgoing and he's the first person to say, hi, my name is John. And that's what I can do to help raise awareness.
Lynn, as you know, Saniona is researching treatments for Prader-Willi syndrome. What words of wisdom do you have for many of the scientists who won't have an opportunity to meet with families like yours?
First of all, I would like to say thank you. Thank you for trying to find a treatment for Prader-Willi syndrome. It doesn't just affect the individual, but it affects families and communities that are trying to help with people with rare disorders. I would also say it's kind of like Thomas Edison. You have to fail a bunch of times and finally, hopefully you get it right. And we can have a treatment for Prader-Willi syndrome that will affect so many countless lives and put a smile on so many people's faces and make it far easier for our people to live happy and healthy lives.